It's show day in Katherine, and locals have the day off to enjoy it.
Once a year it's great, everybody looks forward to it and we're having a hoot.
It's got awesome rides, rodeo's sick.
Country shows like this are finally bouncing back after a COVID-19 enforced hiatus. But the good times may be short-lived.
If foot and mouth got out in Australia, it's just going to be absolutely devastating. It will completely cripple the industry. There'd be years and years and years of bloodlines and work just gone.
Australia's been on high alert since the highly contagious livestock disease, foot and mouth, began spreading quickly through Indonesia. FMD is most likely to get here via illegally imported meat products or on travellers' clothing or shoes. The virus gives cows, sheep, goats and pigs blisters around their mouths and feet. It doesn't pose a risk to humans, but could cost the economy $80 billion.
The impact of an FMD outbreak could be swift and severe. Our exports for red meat and livestock and associated products as well as wool and dairy would be lost overnight, and in many cases it will take years to try and regain that market access for those export products.
Which is why organisers here at the Katherine show are taking every step they can to keep the virus out.
So we're asking everyone that's coming into the cattle yards to start with scrubbing their boots or their shoes or their thongs, and then walking through a disinfectant and then spraying the disinfectant on the soles before they go in. And we're also asking them on the way out to walk through the footbath.
Even though foot and mouth disease hasn't reached Australian soil, some farm businesses are already taking a hit.
It's very quiet, so we haven't sent any animals to Indonesia since the end of May.
Kelly and Don White run a cattle station and a pre-export quarantine depot about 100 kilometres outside Darwin. Other producers bring cattle here to be quarantined before they're trucked away and loaded onto ships bound for Indonesia. Today they're sending cows off to a floodplain to be fattened up and exported later this year. But they're nervous because since the FMD outbreak in Indonesia, live cattle exports have pretty much dried up.
So they're not going to buy a shipload of cattle worth millions of dollars to put in their feedlots over there and contract FMD. They're trying to get as many animals as they can on their farms vaccinated and stop the spread of the disease.
For the Whites, the memory of the foot and mouth disease outbreak in the United Kingdom in 2001 looms large.
Farmers are threatening to block the government's mass slaughter of healthy animals.
It caught authorities on the hop and left them scrambling to control the spread. Movements across the countryside were restricted, forcing people into a form of lockdown that hurt everything from the country pub to the corner store.
Footpaths are out of bounds, museums are deserted, businesses that rely on seasonal tourist trade are facing ruin.
The trauma in communities was palpable, as more than 6 million cows and sheep were euthanased. There hasn't been an FMD outbreak in Australia for more than a century, and the federal government says it's been advised there's less than a 12% chance of it happening. The Agriculture Minister is staring down calls from some in the opposition to close Australia's borders to Indonesia.
I think it now is beholden on the government to explain why they don't take further measures around borders, and if not, when does that kick in?
I think it's very disappointing and a bit surprising, frankly, that we've got a couple of former agriculture ministers out in the media whipping up hysteria, fanning the flames with people who are genuinely scared. To excite people and inflame the tensions that are out there doesn't actually do our farms or farmers any good whatsoever, and it actually, all it is doing is attracting attention internationally that our farm industry doesn't need.
Murray Watt says experts have spent years working on how Australia would respond to an outbreak. Let's say these sheep here in southern New South Wales became infected with foot and mouth. That would mean that every single sheep, cow, pig and goat right across the country would be stopped in their tracks. They wouldn't be able to be moved anywhere. Authorities would then come in and slaughter every single one of these sheep and potentially any other livestock nearby. Vaccination is an option, but research shows it's only going to be effective in more widespread outbreaks. So the key to stamping out the virus is for authorities to be able to use something that we've all become really familiar with: contact tracing. On this farm near Bookham in southern New South Wales, the technology's already geared for a major disease outbreak.
So this here is the electronic tag. This is the most important part of the identification process.
So if there was an outbreak of FMD and this was patient 0, does that mean we could quickly trace this animal?
We would be able to identify him in 10 minutes.
All of James Corcoran's sheep have electronic ear tags. They work like a microchip, giving each sheep an identification number and sending information about the animal to a national database.
So that animal, from the point of when it's born through to the point of sale or slaughter, is traced all the way through its whole life. So whether it goes to 5 different properties or only goes to 1, you know, we know where that animal's been.
There's your EID number.
Yes, there it is, yeah.
But James Corcoran is in the minority. Electronic ear tags are mandatory for cattle, but with the exception of Victoria, farmers don't have to use them for sheep or goats. Instead, they're allowed to track those animals as a whole mob, visually and on paper. Andrew Henderson's been urging producers and governments to strengthen that system, and most states and territories and the Commonwealth are now keen to do so.
The significance of an outbreak of FMD is akin to a natural disaster. It's going to be a national disaster. So in the wash-up of those types of things, there's generally a Royal Commission. And no one wants to be going through that process on the other side of something so significant, having been found wanting and that they could have done more.